Hello Libra, and welcome to Zodiac Whisper Tarot, where the universe doesn't just speak, it whispers directly to your soul. Let me ask you something. What if the numbers you've been seeing weren't random? What if the quiet nudges in your heart, the subtle signs around you, were divine coordinates, guiding you toward balance, love, and abundance this very month? You didn't land on this video by accident. The moment you pressed play, a spiritual alignment clicked into place, and whether you feel it yet or not, you've just crossed a threshold. A shift is beginning. This reading isn't about vague predictions. It's about activating clarity. It's about stepping into the energetic design you were meant to embody. And this month, Libra, 6 specific numbers have been whispered to you by the universe. Sacred numbers that carry the vibration of transformation, rooted harmony, and breakthrough momentum. As we journey together through these 6 numbers, you'll begin to see where you've been out of sync, and more importantly, how to return to the rhythm of your highest self. These are not lottery digits. They're spiritual blueprints. And once you unlock their meaning, your field of abundance begins to respond. But before we go deeper, let me take a moment, sincerely, to thank you for being here. Your presence matters. Every like, every comment, every time you hit subscribe, it doesn't just support this channel. It deepens your connection with the Eternal Mindfulness family and helps deliver these divine messages to more souls who are ready to rise. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Now, if you've been feeling like life is nudging you in a new direction, if you've been noticing repeated numbers, dreams that seem too vivid, or moments of unexplainable clarity, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. So I invite you right now, drop an angel number in the comments. Any number that's been following you, tapping on your awareness, nudging your spirit. This isn't just interaction, it's energetic agreement. You're saying, yes, I'm ready to receive. And Libra, trust me, you'll want to stay with me through this entire reading. Because what the universe is preparing to show you is nothing short of divine orchestration. We're talking about alignment on a soul-deep level, clarity that doesn't just inform, but transforms. And if you're feeling that subtle inner pull right now, it's because something in your field already knows. These 6 numbers weren't sent randomly, they were chosen for you. So take a deep breath. Get centered. Because what comes next could very well change how you walk through the rest of May, and maybe even your life. Let's begin. There's something quietly powerful about the number 2, especially when it shows up in your path during a time of realignment like this. In the energy of Libra, a sign already devoted to harmony, fairness, and beauty, the number 2 becomes more than just a symbol of duality. It becomes a spiritual mirror, reflecting the dance between giving and receiving, between action and stillness, between the inner world and the outer one. You're not being asked to choose one side over the other. You're being invited to recognize that balance is a state you return to, not something you chase. What makes this energy especially meaningful is that it doesn't rush. 2 doesn't compete. It doesn't push. It leans into presence. And in a world that often glorifies independence and self-sufficiency to the point of isolation, the number 2 softly reminds you that you don't have to do it all alone. In fact, you're not meant to. Harmony grows best in relationship, not just with others, but with your own feelings, with time, with space, and with the quiet voice inside that often knows before your mind does. When you let this energy guide you, you stop needing to prove yourself through constant productivity or relentless effort. Instead, you begin to sense the power of mutual resonance, when two things meet at the same vibration and something greater is born. That kind of connection, whether with another person or with a higher version of yourself, brings forward more than just emotional peace. It creates movement. It opens paths. It draws aligned opportunities to your doorstep without the strain of force. The number 2 calls you into that kind of subtle wisdom. And that's why in tarot, it's linked to the High Priestess, a figure who doesn't move unless it's right. She doesn't speak unless the moment is sacred. And she certainly doesn't act just to fill silence. Her power lies in her stillness, her discernment, her deep knowing of when to listen and when to allow the answer to emerge without pushing. Right now, Libra, you're being asked to embody that same quiet strength. To trust that the timing you're in doesn't require noise or fast decisions. Instead of fixing or forcing relationships, romantic, professional, or even with yourself, step back and observe what happens when you soften your stance. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is receive without resistance. That doesn't make you passive. It makes you wise. You might feel the pull to overextend, especially if you're someone who naturally takes care of others. But part of healing in this season is realizing that balance isn't just about giving equally. It's about knowing when to pause, to let yourself be held, and to allow grace in. Think of this not as stepping back, but as stepping in, into a deeper trust in your ability to respond, rather than react. In practical terms, this may be the perfect time to recalibrate your rhythms, both emotional and physical. Begin with your body. Support your nervous system through small acts of nourishment, calming herbal teas like chamomile, a gentle walk at sunset, or simply journaling before bed. These are not just self-care trends, they are rituals of reconnection. Your body, after all, is one of your most intuitive partners. And as you care for your physical balance, don't forget the relational one. Who are you leaning on, and who do you allow to lean on you? Are your connections reciprocal, or are you doing all the holding? If you're unsure, ask yourself gently, have I been allowing myself to receive support, or am I afraid that letting someone in might cost me control? There's no shame in needing. There's no weakness in rest. Even the most powerful trees sway in the wind, and they don't break because of it. You may also feel prompted to seek guidance or mentorship now. Don't wait for someone perfect, just seek someone who resonates. Shared values are more important than shared achievements. Collaboration isn't a step back, it's a step deeper. You're not giving away your independence. You're anchoring it through mutual vision. Let this chapter be a reminder that balance doesn't mean symmetry. It means honesty. It means honoring both your strength and your softness. And it means walking in alignment not by standing alone, but by knowing where you can lean, and where others can lean on you too. Following the energy of balance introduced by the number 2, the presence of number 6 ushers in a gentler, more nurturing kind of alignment, one that invites you to build your life not only with logic or ambition, but with care, beauty, and devotion. Where 2 asks you to harmonize energies, 6 asks you to embody them. It speaks to the heart of what it means to live well, not just successfully, but meaningfully. For Libra especially, a sign deeply connected to aesthetics, fairness, and relationship, this number feels like home. It whispers that love, in its truest form, is not chaotic or confusing. Love is structured. It's intentional. And when it's right, it makes you feel safer, not smaller. There is an art to living beautifully, and it begins with choosing what you surround yourself with. Not in the sense of luxury, but in how consciously you tend to your space, your time, and your relationships. Number 6 reminds you that beauty is not superficial, it's foundational. It grows from the daily decisions you make about how you treat yourself and how you care for those around you. You're being called to create an environment that restores you instead of draining you. And that doesn't just mean cleaning your house or lighting candles. It means asking hard but healing questions. Is this relationship nourishing me, or is it slowly wearing me down? Is my routine supporting my peace, or feeding my stress? In many ways, the number 6 holds the energy of a quiet leader, someone who knows that true influence begins with how we treat those closest to us. It's easy to show up for strangers or give advice to others. But how are you showing up for your partner, your child, your closest friend, or yourself, when no one is watching? This is where the vibration of 6 lives. It exists in those quiet, unglamorous choices that build lasting trust and grounded joy. In tarot, this frequency is echoed in the Lovers, a card not just about romance, but about conscious choice. Choosing to love someone, choosing to stay, choosing to build something real, not just feel something fleeting. It's a call to move beyond infatuation or fantasy, and into responsibility. Not responsibility as burden, but as a sacred offering, the willingness to show up fully, again and again, even when it's not easy. And this also applies inward. Are you choosing yourself in the same way you choose others? When we talk about love as responsibility, it's important to clarify. This doesn't mean sacrificing your needs or losing your identity in the name of caring. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary. To say no. To admit that something is not aligned anymore, even if it once was. One of the gentle truths Scripture reminds us of is that love is patient and kind, but it's also honest. And honesty, especially with yourself, is a gateway to healing. You're allowed to reclaim the parts of you that got quiet while caring for everyone else. As you move through this energy, you might feel called to slow down, to simplify. That's not regression. That's clarity. Light yoga or quiet walks, cooking meals with intention, refreshing your bedroom or workspace. These aren't small acts. They are signals to your nervous system that say, you are safe. You are supported. And from that place of calm, so much more becomes possible. This may also be a month where your finances gently reflect what you've been prioritizing. If your environment has felt chaotic or overly focused on appearances, it might be time to recenter. Investing in what truly matters, not flashy expenses, but things that give back to your peace, is the kind of wealth management number 6 encourages. You don't need more. You need more meaning in what you already have. Lastly, Libra, ask yourself, have you been overgiving? Have you been saying yes when you were silently screaming no? The people who love you don't benefit when you become a hollow version of yourself just to make them comfortable. Speak with clarity. Give with heart. And allow yourself to receive just as deeply. Living beautifully begins with living truthfully. And that, above all, is the message number 6 has come to remind you. Sometimes the most meaningful change arrives not with a warning, but with a whisper that turns into a storm. Following the gentler energies of love and balance we explored before, the presence of numbers 10 and 16 marks a turning point, not just in your outer world, but in the way you see yourself within it. Number 10 is the closing of a chapter, a graceful bow before the next curtain rises. Number 16, on the other hand, shakes the ground beneath your feet so you can no longer pretend the old structure still holds. Together, they are the invitation and the lightning strike, the inner knowing that something is done, and the outer push that makes sure you act on it. When you're standing in this space, it's common to feel disoriented. Things that once felt stable might suddenly seem fragile. You may question choices you thought were permanent. You might even wonder why something you've worked so hard for no longer feels right. That's not a failure. It's clarity catching up with your growth. The wheel of your life is turning, not randomly, but because you're being gently but firmly moved into alignment with what truly serves you now. In astrology, we know that every ending creates space for rebirth. And while Libra energy is often associated with balance and calm, this moment asks you to lean into the truth that peace sometimes requires disruption first. The tarot cards that accompany these numbers, the Wheel of Fortune and the Tower, aren't here to scare you. They're here to remind you that transformation isn't chaos when it's divinely timed. It's liberation. You don't have to wait for everything to fall apart before you choose change. In fact, part of maturity is learning to recognize the gentle inner nudge before it becomes a shout. So let's talk about your work, your routine, the path you've chosen. Is it aligned, or just familiar? Sometimes what looks stable is only stable because we've stopped growing inside of it. That's what I mean when I say, false stability. It doesn't mean it's bad, just outdated. And there's no shame in outgrowing something that once gave you comfort. Now would be a beautiful time to pause and reset. Write down 10 things you're no longer willing to tolerate, not from the world, but from yourself. Patterns, habits, fears, delays. Be honest. Then make a second list, 16 things you believe you deserve now. Not in theory, but in practice. Let it be specific. Let it be bold. This isn't about manifesting through force, it's about naming what your life has space for now that you've released the weight of what no longer belongs. You may notice your body asking for the same kind of recalibration. Sleep patterns, energy crashes, mood swings, these are signals, not flaws. Your nervous system is adjusting to a new frequency. Don't fight it by overloading yourself. Instead, treat rest as a sacred tool. Rebuild your rhythm slowly, without guilt. Remember, consistency doesn't require perfection. It requires compassion. Even in scripture, we're reminded not to carry what no longer fits the season we're in. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And if fear of failure creeps in as you consider these shifts, ask yourself gently, if I wasn't afraid of starting over, what would I choose now? This question isn't about being reckless. It's about being real. Real with your desires. Real with your purpose. Real with your soul. You are not being asked to tear down everything. You are being asked to stop building on foundations that were never meant to last. What comes next isn't uncertain, it's undiscovered. And the sooner you let go of what's already complete, the the faster you'll meet what's waiting on the other side of your courage. After the intensity of transformation brought by numbers 10 and 16, the energy of 24 arrives like a calming hand on your shoulder, not to slow you down, but to remind you that true progress is rooted, not rushed. This number carries the quiet wisdom of building something that can last, something stable, meaningful, and aligned with who you're becoming. While some changes feel like revolutions, the influence of 24 feels more like architecture. It asks you to lay one brick at a time, with care, with presence, and with a long-term vision that honors both your emotional truth and your intellectual discernment. There's something beautifully balanced about 24. It reflects the union of heart and mind, a call to build your life from a space that includes both structure and softness. Libra, this resonates deeply with your essence, because you understand the delicate dance between logic and feeling. But this energy challenges you to bring that awareness into practice. What systems are you building that support your peace, not just your performance? Are the choices you're making now ones that your future self will thank you for? This is a time to zoom out. Not to escape the moment, but to see the bigger picture with new clarity. In Tarot, the Hierophant reminds us to build from what is tried and true, not in a rigid or dogmatic way, but with respect for the foundational principles that keep life steady. This might look like recommitting to your morning rituals, cleaning up your diet, or reevaluating your financial priorities. It might also mean getting honest with yourself about the emotional clutter you've been stepping over, those "I'll deal with it later" feelings that are quietly influencing your decisions every day. On a physical level, your body may be craving consistency. Skipping meals, sleeping erratically, or overbooking your schedule creates a ripple effect in your nervous system that impacts not only your mood but your decision-making. Prioritize nourishment, not only food, but time to digest your thoughts, moments of stillness, and routines that bring your nervous system back to center. Often, what we label as burnout is simply the result of too many unstable inputs and not enough grounding rituals. This energy also invites you to reconsider the way you approach your work. 24 is strategic. It's not impulsive. If you're thinking about making a career shift, a move, or a bold investment, take a pause and ask, is this choice coming from stability or from restlessness? There's nothing wrong with change, but change that lasts is usually built on a clear, steady foundation. You don't need all the answers right now. But you do need a map, even if it's just a rough one. Try outlining a vision for the next 24 weeks. What do you want to feel, create, build, or refine? Let it be practical. Let it be peaceful. In love and relationships, the number 24 calls for clarity. No more vague half-promises or emotional guesswork. You deserve conversations that go beneath the surface, that clarify intentions, and that give you the security to rest, not question. Real connection thrives on honesty, not intensity. If you've been holding back your truth to keep things balanced, ask yourself whether you're actually maintaining harmony or simply avoiding disruption. There's a difference, and you feel it in your gut. In the quiet teachings passed down through generations, we're often reminded that wisdom is not proven by how fast you build, but by how long what you build can stand. When your choices are grounded in both care and clarity, you don't need to chase validation. Peace becomes the proof. So ask yourself gently, am I building a life that allows me to sleep well at night, not just succeed during the day? Because at the end of it all, it's not about how much you did. It's about whether what you did truly supported the life you were meant to live. That's what number 24 is here to help you remember. Where the number 24 invited you to build from clarity and foundation, the number 31 asks you to step fully into ownership, not just of what you're creating, but of who you've become in the process. This isn't the kind of energy that seeks attention. In fact, it often moves quietly, in the background, behind the scenes. But make no mistake, it carries the deep current of intentional freedom, the kind that doesn't scream to be seen but radiates from within because it's rooted in truth. Libra, this number arrives at the close of your cosmic cycle, and it doesn't ask you to perform, prove, or polish your image. Instead, it invites you to look at yourself, honestly, gently, and recognize how far you've come. There's a stillness to 31, like the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs outside permission to trust their path. If you've been feeling a subtle inner shift, as if the old rules no longer apply and the old roles no longer fit, it's because you're standing at the edge of a new landscape, one that requires a different kind of presence. One that is fully yours. This is a number of self-leadership, not the loud kind that needs a stage, but the kind that happens when you make consistent, integrity-based choices that align with your values even when no one's watching. It reminds us that freedom doesn't always look like chaos or escape. Sometimes, it looks like discipline. Sometimes it's the quiet yes you whisper to yourself after a long period of uncertainty. And sometimes, it's simply no longer seeking applause for things that only your soul needs to understand. In the tarot, the World card speaks directly to this energy. You've completed something. A cycle. A belief. A version of yourself. And now, you're being asked to consciously choose how you want to close the door, because how you end something shapes the energy you carry into what comes next. Closure doesn't always come from outside. Often, it's a choice we make on the inside, to no longer carry the weight of what no longer serves us, even if it once defined us. From a practical lens, this is an ideal moment to reassess what's quietly sustaining you. Take a closer look at any passive income, forgotten talents, neglected opportunities, the small streams that may be contributing more than you realize. Are there seeds you've planted long ago that are just now beginning to bloom? Sometimes, the financial abundance we're waiting for doesn't come from more effort, but from better attention. Aligning with number 31 is about becoming the kind of person who notices what's working, and builds from there. In your personal life, this energy invites you to do something most people avoid, to truly honor your journey. Write down 31 things you've overcome in the past 6 months. Let them be small or monumental. What matters is that they're real. You may be surprised at how much strength you've quietly carried. This reflection isn't about glorifying the struggle. It's about reclaiming your story with gentleness, and realizing that much of your growth didn't need to be loud to be powerful. As you move forward, let clarity guide you more than approval. Decisions made from inner alignment rarely need external validation. And if there's a freedom you've been denying yourself, whether it's a creative choice, a boundary, or a lifestyle shift, ask if the only thing holding you back is the fear of how others might feel. We often mistake people-pleasing for kindness, but true kindness starts with honesty. And there's nothing more compassionate than living in alignment with the truth of who you are. There's wisdom in the quiet, strength in the unseen, and peace in not having to explain every move you make. That's the grace 31 brings. Not the kind of freedom that demands to be witnessed, but the kind that allows you to walk forward, rooted, grounded, and completely free to be exactly who you are. Libra, if you've made it this far, it means your spirit has been listening closely, not just to my words, but to something deeper stirring within you. And that's no small thing. You've allowed yourself to be still long enough to hear the subtle wisdom that often gets drowned out in the noise of daily life. That alone is a sign of growth, of readiness, of courage that doesn't shout, but whispers, "I'm ready to live in alignment with who I truly am." This month has not come to test you, it has come to realign you. To invite you to walk more gently, more honestly, more intentionally into the version of yourself that has always been waiting for permission to lead. The 6 numbers you've explored, 2, 6, 10, 16, 24, 31, weren't just scattered insights. They were stepping stones. Each one offered you a mirror. Each one asked you to remember a part of yourself that may have been quieted or doubted or hidden. They've asked you to pause, reflect, decide, and most importantly, to reclaim your authority over your own direction. You don't need to prove your worth by keeping everything balanced. You are not the world's peacekeeper. You are a soul with a rhythm of its own. A heart that deserves rest. A mind that deserves clarity. A voice that deserves to be heard without apology. Your journey this month is not about adding more to your plate. It's about clearing space, space to feel, space to choose, space to live from intention rather than obligation. That's what true balance actually means. It's not perfection. It's presence. So as you move forward, I want to invite you into a deeper question. What would your life look like if you stopped asking, "Am I enough?" and started asking, "What do I want to build from the truth of who I already am?" How would you speak? What would you release? What would you allow yourself to receive? The most powerful change you'll make this month won't come from outside validation. It will come from the moment you choose to believe that everything you need to begin, or begin again, is already inside you. No more waiting. No more hiding. No more adjusting your light to make others comfortable. Now is the time to act, softly, steadily, and in harmony with your own frequency. Start by making one decision today that aligns with your values, not your fears. Let it be small if it needs to be. Every shift counts. Every honest moment builds momentum. And if something in this message has touched a chord in you, don't let it fade. Comment below with the words, "I allow goodness to find me without needing control." Let that be your affirmation this week. Let that be your reminder that when you step back from control, you step closer to flow. Also, take a moment to share this video with someone who might need to hear it. You never know how deeply your choice to pass on a message could change another person's direction. And if this content feels aligned with your journey, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and becoming part of the Eternal Mindfulness family, where your growth is sacred, your truth is welcome, and your presence is honored. Libra, the world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs a real one. The one that creates quietly, loves fiercely, and walks with grace even when the path is uncertain. That's the version that will change everything, not just for you, but for the world you're meant to influence. And so I'll leave you with this. You don't have to carry the weight of keeping everything together. You only need to carry the light of your own truth, and trust that it will be enough to illuminate the way ahead.